What's up, DGens? This is Locked In. As per usual, I'm your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mace on the Twitter. Let me see if I can find it right there. Yep, that's it right there. I'm super excited. It's the first NFL edition of Locked In for the 2022 season. I've had like 3 of these Locked In shows this week, but all leading up to this one, I'm super excited. Today, we're breaking down the futures market, namely the win total futures out of the AFC. With me, as always, we have the brains of this operation, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta, at Vishaal_Gupta 95 on the Twitter. Go yell at him there. It's time, V. We're back. Yes. I'm so excited. And to think they actually gave us a show, V. They gave us a show. If only they knew what we had in store. Are you excited? I'm ready.
I'm so excited. This is going to be a great season. It's been too long since the last time we jumped on. But yeah, I'm super excited for this upcoming season.
You know what, B, I've missed you too, buddy. I totally have. You make me all the money in the world. I can't get enough of you. But, I'm super excited to break it down. And tonight, also joining us, we have some new blood. We have, for starters, Ben Hunt. Ben has been breaking down the props market this season. He's uncovered a lot of gold, and I can't wait to see it cash. Great to finally get you on, Ben. Why don't you tell the DGens a little bit about yourself?
Well, if everybody here is a DGen, then I'm just like you. I just wonder if that was your reaction to have you guys having a show together, and you're almost cackling with evil joy. What's in store for me? I just wonder what's in store for me. But I mean, any sort of bad feeling, you definitely calm my nerves with saying that Vishaal is going to give us winners. So I'm always looking for an edge. Let's do it.
It is. It looks like you've already got some fans, and we love to see it. So I'm super excited to get going. We have a lot in store. It's going to be a great episode. And, Ben, we'll have you on all the time because you've got that mustache there. As long as you can evil twirl it, I think we're in good standing. Yeah, just like that.
I'll put that request in with my barber next time I see her. More evil.
I love it. Yeah. The more evil, the better. We love to see it. So for starters, we're going to break down the AFC. I wanted to fit us all in for the entire 32, but I think that's a little too much for one sitting for us right off the rip. So we're going to break it down into sections. We're going to start with the AFC tonight, and then same time next week, we're doing the NFC. It's going to be a lot of fun. We might even have some more new blood to introduce. We'll see when we get there. So to start us off, to kick us off right off the bat, we've got the AFC North. And namely, right in alphabetical order, we have the Baltimore Ravens with a win total line of 10.5. You can also find it at 9.5 and 10 in some places. So be sure to shop that one if you're really, really interested. So I'm going to dive right into it. Vishaal, how are you seeing the Baltimore Ravens coming out of this season?
I'm liking them a lot. I'm a big Lamar guy. I think he's very talented. I think he's got the tools. Obviously he has the rushing, but I think he's an underrated passer to the regular viewer who might just think, he's only somebody who's good with his legs. He can make the throws. He can make the plays. He showed a lot last year when he was healthy, a couple comeback wins. I still remember that week 2 game last year against the Chiefs when they were down big and he, just carried that team back. I think that was a big moment for him. And, if he can stay healthy for the full 17 games, I don't have too much apprehension on taking the over in this one. I think that's the only big question mark for me is just his health. I mean, they were playing pretty well last year until he got hurt, and then they fizzled out and missed the playoffs, finished below 500. But if he's there for a full 17, I'm totally down for the over, even though their weapons are maybe not as good as some of the other teams that we're going to be talking about today. I think Lamar himself is talented enough to carry them to over 10.5.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head right there, and I agree. I think that the biggest difference maker there obviously has to be Lamar because he's not only their quarterback, but he is their biggest playmaker. So when you lose a guy like that on the field, it's history. We know exactly what happens because we saw it play out. And I think that it shows exactly how good they can be they are still favored to win this division. So that is for good reason. Ben, what are you seeing when you see this team?
I'm seeing a lot. I'm echoing a lot of what Vishaal said. I'm predicting a bounce back year for him, not just with Lamar, but the defense as well. And we think of the injuries he sustained, but the defense also sustained quite a lot of injuries last year. A lot of those guys are back. They added Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, who was very high on a lot of draft boards, the unanimous number one safety. And then you said they don't have that many difference makers on the offensive side of the ball other than Lamar. I think Bateman is going to emerge, and I think we're going to look at him at the end of the year as it's hard to rank wideouts nowadays because we want to put everybody in the top 10, 20, whatever it is. But he's going to emerge. I like his skill set in this offense a lot more than Marquise Brown. You referenced a specific game. A game that I watched over and over last year was the Miami-Baltimore game, and just so many opportunities left on the field. And it was a short week on the road for Baltimore, I believe. But
it was a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
An interesting defensive scheme that game.
Yes, and just the inability for anyone other than Mark Andrews to run a 15 to 25 yard dig route and get any level of separation. That's what would have won that game because they were playing a lot of cover one across the board. And I think Bateman's going to get the separation in those spots and provide something that they haven't had in the past. Their schedule is tough, but when you look around the division, it's not as tough as everyone else. And I think there's a lot of motivation on both on the field and off. If there's a coach on the hot seat that's not a head coach, you might have to look at Greg Roman. There's already a few things in the works, cogs at play, trying to take a little bit of power away from him and maybe strengthen it if they're trying to get rid of him midway through the season if things don't go that well. They're taking a little bit of things off of his plate, I've seen. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I think it's going to be a good year for him. When you look at the teams that they're playing outside of the shared teams in the division, Jags, Broncos, and Giants, those are pretty good. Playing the Jags and the Giants, usually two pretty good opportunities for wins each and every year.
Needless to say, yeah, that's probably an easy one right there. So we'll pencil it in. Keep an eye on Greg Roman, who may be on the hot seat. But also, if our fearless leader, Steve Bonham, is listening to this, that means that Ben probably gets a raise because he, shouted out Rashad Bateman, who is definitely our guy, Steve's guy. So.
Well, let me shout out myself, too. I didn't even mention he was featured in one of my articles, even the cover boy. I think I used the yardage total, but I flip-flopped on that. You could go touchdown total because I think that's going to hit. It's over 5.5, I believe. Across the board, any one of those you want to bet, they're all pretty good.
I'm pretty sure you highlighted I think you took the yards, but I'm pretty sure you highlighted, hey, just take literally anything because
any of them. The receptions is good too. There's so much available in that offense and so much opportunity just within the structure of the routes and the scheme, the way it's created. I don't think Greg Roman is going to get fired. I think he's going to come with enough smoke and with enough new stuff because he has this new tool and because maybe he feels the heat, but it's there.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised too. I mean, he's done so much to really highlight Lamar and other quarterbacks' games in his system that it's almost a perfect fit, and it's been a nice fit. It won an MVP for Lamar, so you know that it can work, but you'd obviously like to see it take steps forward. So it'll definitely be an interesting evolution to see play out this season. And I agree with you. I think that it'll probably end up working out for the better because when you have a guy that's so talented like Lamar, when you finally get him some more targets, like the sky is the limit. And I think that this is a really great way to approach what they might have going on coming up. So I agree with it, guys. And like we said, you can shop that around. And also, like we were referencing Ben's article. You guys can find all of those over at importantnonsense.com. He's going to be writing more player props throughout the preseason. We've got him on some special duties. He's going to find you some real value come the season 2. So you guys want to lock in. Don't want to miss that. It's going to be a good read. I'm actually excited to read it. Ben, I have a feeling that Ben is going to have a lot of winners for us too, because all your stuff has been great so far.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we move on to the next team, the Super Bowl bound Cincinnati Bengals with a 9.5 wins. What are we thinking of that one, Ben?
Well, this is one of the more difficult ones. There are some of these. I didn't even mention this. I invested in Baltimore to win the Super Bowl even before the draft. More of an investment in their draft strategy as a whole, and thinking that line would go up. And I think it has since. Plus, they always look good in training camp with Lamar with the visor. This one is tough because their schedule is not easy. It is not easy. Their original games, I will call them, games that they only play and that the rest of the division does not, are Cowboys, Chiefs, and Titans. A little sneak peek. I do not think the Cowboys are going to be what they were last year. I think they're going to be a little bit down. But even saying that, that's still a pretty tough three. Having said all that, I can't fade Joe Burrow. I can't fade Jamar Chase. I can't fade T. Higgins. I bet all the over props for yardage totals, touchdowns for all the receivers last year, and the point total over for the Bengals. I just didn't have the heart. I didn't have the heart to bet any sort of Super Bowl props for them, and I will regret it until my grave. But I think the over will hit. I think I think they will overcome whatever adversity comes their way. I mean, the upgrades to the offensive line, whether or not Jesse Bates comes in, I think they'll figure that out. It's a little disconcerting that they have the two probably most coveted things in the NFL, that being a rookie quarterback on his rookie deal and a wide receiver one now on his rookie deal, is becoming a very highly coveted thing. And they aren't really maximum, but I don't know. I think they're bottom 5 in cap usage.
I'd have to check, but I think you're right. That sounds about right.
Which typical Bengals, for that's what they're known for. But if there was ever a spot to do it, this is the time. And I believe that they should, but it's kind of sad that they're not. However, I think they can do it. I think it's going to be a lot of coin flip type games, the way it was last year in their run. If you look back at those games, there was a lot of things that could have broken the other way, and they could have been out in the first round, second round, anywhere along the way. But I can't fade this team. They're too. I'm just down the road. They're too near and dear to my heart. I'm not a fan, but I'm a fan of their players.
I mean, it's easy to like Cool Joe. That's for sure. I am. He's dreamy. What can we say?
Right.
V, are you co-signing that, or what are you thinking about this Bengals team? Do you think they have more magic in them? It's really, like Ben said, when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal and an elite wide receiver also on a rookie deal, two of the historically most highly paid positions in the NFL, it's hard to see a team sit on cap. So what do you make of this team going into the season?
Totally in agreement with everything here. I think their biggest weakness last year was obviously offensive line. And what did they do this offseason? They just signed Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, and just revamped that whole unit. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? If you have a weakness, go out and address it. And they didn't really lose anything from anywhere else on their team. They still have a great wide receiver room with Chase, Higgins, Boyd. Mixon is still relatively young. I'm sure he'll have no issues putting up solid numbers. And they have enough guys on the defense that are solid players. Trey Hendrickson is one of my favorite underrated players, I think, in the league. Jesse Bates, I'm sure they'll figure something out to bring him back in. They just have enough talent all over the place. And Burrow and Chase are not done developing. I mean, they can get better. As good as they were last year, they're not even 23, 24 years old. Why can't they get significantly better as their years go on? So I'm totally in on the over as well.
Ooh, that's a good point, B. That's a scary combination when you think about how lethal they've been. And that's a combination that sometimes you see teams who are like, if only they had a quarterback like that, if only they had a target like that. And these guys have that. They have that chemistry right off the rip, and they're going to be together for the foreseeable future and hopefully even further into the future. And that alone is worth a multitude of wins, I would imagine, when you really break it down. So I'm right there in agreement with you. I think they both, I mean, we can't give everybody an over, but I definitely think when it comes down to this division, which used to be a really hard fought division, is going to not be quite as tough, especially with the Steelers that are going to probably bow out a little bit early. Yeah, they're not going to really.
It's still going to be pretty tough, I think. I mean, there's enough good quarterback play
True.
besides Pittsburgh, depending on what happens in another city, that it's going to be tough enough, I think.
Yeah. And that other city, which is the one we'll break down here, is the Cleveland Browns. So their numbers obviously fluctuated and been different and wasn't on the board for a while due to the Watson suspension and the drama that continues to develop around that. So this is kind of up in the air right now, or at least when I pulled all these numbers, we had the Cleveland Browns at a win total of 9.5, the very same as the Bengals and a similar line as the Ravens. So do you guys see this team, this Browns team, given how many games Watson might be suspended, do you guys see them still making up this type of ground on any of them? What do you think about that, Vishaal?
Well, I mean, if you can, probably just stay away from this one, to be honest. I mean, it's just probably not going to be worth that headache because the suspension stuff is still very much up in the air. Besides the quarterback position, this is a great roster. I think this is a Super Bowl ready roster. I think the addition of getting Amari Cooper for what was it, a 5th round pick, was a great move.
A steal, a song.
You know, if they somehow get Will Fuller too, I mean, this is a Super Bowl ready roster, and I think Watson is definitely good enough to take them there with this play. But for this season, even if it just stays at a 6-game suspension, I would probably lean the under. I mean, Brissett is fine, but even if he goes, say, 3-3 in those first 6 games, Watson would have to go 7-4 in his final 11 for them to hit the over. And that's doable given his talent, but he's missed almost 2 years of football now. There's going to be rust there. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable putting any sort of significant action on the over in this one. So, you know, stay away or probably lean the under on this one.
Yeah, and understandable. And, you know, new team. So nothing's to say that he's going to hit the ground running. Like, he's obviously immensely talented. But, yeah, so I'm right there with you. What do you think about this one, Ben?
I agree. This is probably the toughest one for me. This is the most difficult division, so it's just tough. We started with it. If they were
right to the fire, Ben. That's how we do it here.
Right. Yeah.
Baptism by fire.
Right. Yeah. I think if they were in another division, they would go over. I don't actually. I think of Jacoby Brissett versus last year's version of Baker Mayfield. And I think Jacoby Brissett's going to play within structure a little bit more and do some of the things that Kevin Stefanski wants a little bit more. So it's really like you said, I would stay away. I mean, this is the one I switched the most because their schedule opens up so easy. I think they're going to be 4-0 going to week 5 with the Chargers. They could easily. It starts out at Carolina, the Jets, a short week, but at home to Pittsburgh, and then at Atlanta. And I don't know what just happened to Drake London, but something just happened to Drake London. Some sort of knee injury, and he's not. It didn't look good based on the bland update. They didn't soften the blow, I'll say, in the update. So they're going to have to tail off. I would stay away from this. I've switched this one a million times. I think under. But I'm only picking under on the record here because I just picked 2 overs for the other teams, and I understand some level of math.
It's the law of averages. You're right. Yeah. The law of averages. I like that, Ben. You know, and I agree. It's there's just so much unknown that why put your money into that when you could effectively just use more units on something else further down this list that we're probably way more solid on. So I'm right there with you guys. It's a tough draw, but I guess it's something we, ought to break down. And there are some gluttons for punishment out there. I mean, there are some degenerates that I'm sure will sniff that line. And just like Ben said, they see a team that can go over that line and a really easy start to the schedule, and they think that, hey, I'm going to cash on that. But
just bet them the first 4 weeks, or if you're that much of a glutton for punishment, bet them to win the Super Bowl. If you think they're going to come back and go 7-4 or whatever V said, bet them to win. If you think it's over and you think Watson's going to be in form, shoot the moon. Don't just bet the over.
There you go. I like that strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, because it's already going against the grain, so you might as well lean into it. So
I think
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a solid strategy as well, because I think the fact that even though he's scheduled to miss 6 games, they set the over-under at 9.5. If any other quarterback was going to miss 6 games, would their over-under be that high? I mean, I think that kind of tells you a lot about how good people think their roster is. So I like that strategy, betting.
It's such a tip of the cap to the roster. Such a tip of the cap to the roster.
Yeah.
And the scheme as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. But then to close out the North, we have the lowly Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out to our guy Mike Manning, who this is probably going to hurt a little bit. What do we see going on with the Steelers, V?
No, I just don't think so. I mean, love
No
Mike
hope for
Tomlin.
Mike?
No, Mike Tomlin is great. Mike Manning, you're great. All the Mikes are great, but I don't know about this year. As a Bears fan, I know what Trubisky is. I know what he can do, and I definitely know what he can't do. He can't lead your team to having a good season. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it. I mean, he's struggling to win a QB competition with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. I mean, I don't even know how anybody could feel comfortable taking any sort of over on this team with their quarterback situation. So I'm just going to take the under.
That's real pain in Vishaal's voice, everybody. He's a Bears fan, and that was firsthand pain in the voice. I'm sorry, my friend. I'm sorry that you had to endure that.
And I'm sorry to all the Pittsburgh people who are going to have to suffer through this year.
Exactly. There's no terrible towel's going to wipe away that mess.
No.
So, Ben, are you in agreement on this one, or what are you thinking about the Steelers here?
Concrete agreement. Not to twist the knife or anything, V, but I have to, since I'm a Packer fan and we own you.
Ooh.
But I have never laughed. That was the hardest I've ever laughed at any draft pick when they picked Trubisky that year. I mean, to pick him on so few college starts, that was a funny one. That was a very funny one. I'm not even going to mention who else was on the board or anything like that.
That's all right. I'm not going to mention all the playoff losses over the last 10 years.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. But
don't worry, V. I'm going to write this
down. I bet everyone.
We'll save this for next week. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to cover this next week.
It's easy to see.
It's okay, V. Don't worry. I'm going to write it down. Ben, never coming on the show again.
No, I make so much money off the Packers making the playoffs and knowing full well that they're probably going to come up short and that they're overvalued by the public. And that's nothing to say about any of their players. It's just to say, they don't have that ceiling. I feel like a lot of times in those games. And that year, the Tampa Bay game, let's not get into it. That was the year. That was the year that was their best shot, and it's been all downhill from there. But let's get back to the Steelers. They're terrible. Yeah, it's hilarious that everybody was like that. They're not terrible. They have such good management and their leadership, and they have good processes within what they do as a franchise. For instance, their wide receivers. Like my wide receiver one coming out of this draft was George Pickens. It's easy to say now, but when you hear all these things coming out of camp and he's going to overtake Chase Claypool, which I think Chase Claypool with a quarterback of some substance could be a pretty good. I'd love to see him go somewhere else. And I think he will, because I think George Pickens will emerge to some extent. How much is Trubisky going to be able to take advantage of him? I don't think that's going to happen. I was jonesing to look and find George Pickens Rookie of the Year bets until I saw he went to Pittsburgh and that was going to be their quarterback room. I charted, I think, 2 or 3 games of Kenny Pickett last year for PFF, and I was surprised that Kenny Pickett was kind of getting this first round pub, and I was kind of surprised that it went down as it did in the draft. It's their schedule doesn't do them any favors. Yeah. Their O-line doesn't do them any favors. Trubisky's going to be able to get out of the way of it a lot easier, and I actually think he's a free quarterback that can provide you some utility in fantasy, especially 2 quarterback leagues. But I mean, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for good things to say right now, I feel, and they're going to go under.
Yeah, this is a team that's going to be obviously in the running to take one of those stud QBs high next year. So, I mean, that's just where they are as a franchise. But I agree, everything else is good. Their management is good. Their coaching is good. They have talent in a lot of other places, including wide receiver, but that's all secondary in the NFL. Really, the only thing that matters, first and foremost, is your quarterback. And if you don't have it, then we're just not going to talk about you.
Absolutely. And, this is going to be an interesting case study moving forward because this is a team that is well coached, is well managed. You would think that if they were going to stay down, it would only be for a short time. But this is also some of those times that watch the Pittsburgh Steelers do what the Steelers do. And because they're well coached, they end up with 8 wins and out of the running of the top 5 picks because they went 500 or whatever. And that could be a detriment to this team if they're not pushing for a higher draft pick. But it's hard to see the Steelers being that type of team. You know what I mean? So it's going to be an extremely interesting case study on a potential asset, a potential plus for your team that might hinder it in the long run. But that'll be something we approach as we get down to it. So the odds to win the division, boys. What do we think about this one? I think I have the odds here too. Let me take a look here. I do.
Speaking of bets not to touch with a 10-foot pole, this is probably, unless you think you have a read, I'm not touching any of these.
Agreed.
But gun to my head, I'll pick Ravens just because I think they're
it's plus money.
I just that defense. I think they've got a little bit. They've got the pieces to at least give the Bengals a little bit of trouble. I'm going to count the Browns out just based on all the variants they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that highlights from this list right here is that just like we all broke down, these teams are decently close. Even though we might like the Ravens to win it, any of these teams could really set themselves apart, and it is tough. It's a little less tough without the Steelers. It's a little less tough without the Browns having a starting quarterback right off the rip. But, it could go either way. We'll see how it comes down to it. So, let's see.
This division reminds me of the NFC West last year. A little bit.
That makes sense.
Multiple teams. I could definitely see 2-3 teams. I mean, at least 2 making the playoffs, and then we'll see what Cleveland does later in the season.
Interesting. So that'll be a good one to watch play out. So on to the East, the AFC East. All 4 teams have some pretty tough schedules here. We're starting off with some people's Super Bowl favorites, the Buffalo Bills, with 11.5 wins. Ben, what are you seeing out of the Buffalo Bills?
Well, it's hard to see very many things that you don't like. I look for they have one of the best rosters in the league, and then one of the holes last year was the lack of a top-tier pass rusher, a lack of a guy that could go and get you that bucket being a sack when you needed it, which that obviously benefited the Rams greatly down the stretch, especially in the Super Bowl. But if we're looking for holes, they are a little bit thin on the back end, but if there's anybody that can make that work, it's Sean McDermott. I have my doubts about Trey White being able to come back and be what everyone's expecting him to be. I want him to do this. He's on my dynasty team. I love Trey White, but he has a similar injury to James Wiseman. I don't if you follow basketball, so I don't know, like different body types and everything. So, but like he's due back halfway through the season. I hope that's how it works out. They're definitely counting on that. But what if he isn't? Then you're counting on a rookie corner, Teron Johnson, Dane Jackson. Does that sound enough to be relied upon in the playoffs consistently? I don't know, but it definitely is enough to win in the regular season. And it's disgusting to take an over of 11.5, but it'd be disgusting to fade these guys. And when you go through each one, they have a tough schedule, but I think they match up well with almost every team they face. And who has the horses to stop Josh Allen if he plays like Josh Allen down the stretch last year?
Right.
Very few teams.
They could boat race literally anybody to the point that it doesn't matter if they're putting few rookie corners out there. They've got 40 on the board, and it's the first 1 to 40 wins for them. That might be how they go this year. But just like you said, I think with McDermott, they might, they'll be able to put some stuff together and keep those guys.
I think it could be Shootout City.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, because with a talent like Allen, we've been talking about it, and a lot of these lines are really going to come down to the quarterback play. It sucks to be like that singular about such an intricate topic, but the game of football starts and stops with quarterback play, and the teams that can count on it week in and week out have a better opportunity to make good on these numbers than other teams. So, I mean, I definitely see it. I agree. It's hard to see a number like 12 wins being an absolute lock, but I think it's hard not to look at it and be like, I mean, they've probably got 14 in them this year or something like that. So I agree there. What are you seeing when you see this team, Vishaal? I know that you've been pretty big on the Bills for a while now, and you've seen this kind of come to fruition. So what are you thinking?
Yep. Yeah, and again, remember, I mentioned this a lot last year when writing the offseason articles, but this is an 18-game season now. So in order for you to hit the under on this, they would have to lose 6+ games. That's a lot of games for this Bills team to lose. It happened last year, but that was a little bit wacky and a little unfortunate with how some of the games ended, and just very unlikely fashion, very low probability fashion. So it's hard to see that repeating again this year. I think, Ben, I think you wrote about this too. You mentioned this before too, but yeah, I don't see that happening again. I think they're going to steamroll this division. There's just not enough challenge right now in some of these teams. Maybe somebody like the Jets can come up in the next year or two, but for this season, the Bills are going to steamroll this division. I don't see them having any trouble getting over 11.5.
Yeah, absolutely.
One stick to throw in the spinning wheel might be replacing Dable, but there's a lot of continuity there.
I wrote about that in my MVP article, and I had Allen number 1 overall. I mentioned, losing Daboll is definitely probably their only thing that they're going to have to try to overcome this offseason. But Dorsey's been there for 3 or 4 years working on. He worked alongside Daboll, so I agree continuity should hopefully still be there.
Right, and I want to take something back. I looked at their schedule. It's actually not that hard. It really isn't. I don't think that, and they don't face very many teams that match up that well. I mean, they play the NFC North.
That's one of those things, is that it's like it might be a decent schedule for a different team, but they're just so good that it's like, I mean, is anybody really, like you alluded to, is anybody gonna have the horses to keep up with them? And I think definitely not in this division, and I think the odds makers see that too. When you look at the line for winning this division, the Bills are minus 200. So
I think if you were trying to attack this line, I have not looked for these in quite some time, but if you could find an alternate win total and just try and find 14 or 15, and just go for it all. Might as well.
Yeah, that would, if you could find it. I mean, the odds would probably be, I mean, they're going to be a lot nicer than what you're finding here. That's for sure. So we're all in agreement there. Bills are going to be hard to beat. But everybody else also gets a line because we do participation trophies in Vegas. So the Dolphins have a line of 8.5. What are we seeing with that one, Ben? What are you thinking?
This was an interesting one. This was, of all the teams, this was probably the most interesting case study. I've got them going 8 and 9, but I'm not necessarily comfortable with that, so that's barely under. I mean, it's going to be interesting right out of the gate. You get kind of the contrast of them versus Miami, and here lately they've been owning Miami, so to speak, at least in the win-loss column. New England. Thank you for setting me straight. But I'd like to be able to see them a little bit more to be able to invest in that game, but it's kind of the contrast of the two. New England has the most bland of offense, and you can make the argument that Miami's going to come out and have a very electric offense, or at least they're going to have some bells and whistles and doing a lot of innovative things. I think it's tough. This one's tough. I think under, but when I'm looking at one of the reasons, Texans, you can take that as a win, but then they also play the Niners and the Chargers as their out of division games. I kind of don't like how they match up with certain teams from the NFC North. It's going to be interesting to see how their wide receiver core does. Interesting case study in wide receivers overall with Tyreek Hill going from Kansas City to Miami. One thing I would like to see them do on defense is unleash Jerome Baker. He was a pretty good pass rusher in limited snaps last year. If they wouldn't have gotten Melvin Ingram, I think this would be a little bit even easier under, because you could make the argument they had a bad pass rush, at least if someone doesn't emerge like Jalen Phillips. But I think under, but not confident. It's going to be. I will watch every Dolphins game on the edge of my seat, though.
I'm sure you won't be alone. The greater Miami-Dade County area will too. V, what do you see when you see this Dolphins team and Tua and all the hype that surrounded them coming out? I've heard some people compare this Dolphins team to the old KC teams that Tyreek Hill's coming from. So what do you make of that when you see this roster and see what they have coming up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough comparison. It's a lot easier said than done. Let's not make this into an Eagles dream team type situation right now. That doesn't usually work out well. But I agree with Ben that this is very difficult. I think Tua is one of the two most confusing players in the NFL, him and Jalen Hurts, in terms of I just am still very confused on how good they are. And their play is very important to how the league will turn out this year in terms of how good those teams will do and how they'll affect other teams. If Tua can be good, there's no reason this team shouldn't hit over 8.5 wins and make the playoffs. This is a very good roster, especially on offense. One of the themes I have when picking these win totals this year was I'm very much more bullish on teams that acquired players than the teams who lost players, especially these big-time players. Miami made a huge move that I don't think anybody saw coming when they made this Tyreek Hill trade and then giving him that massive contract. It might be a lot of money. It might have been a lot of picks, but this is a stud receiver who could unlock this offense. And pairing him with Jalen Waddle, adding somebody like Cedric Wilson, and then adding all these running backs and Edmonds and Mostert, this could be a very good offense.
So much
speed. You bring in a coach like Mike McDaniel, who certainly doesn't have a lot of experience, but could be very creative coming off that Kyle Shanahan tree. There's a lot to be excited about, but it definitely comes all the way down to Tua. If he can't handle it, they're moving on next year. There's just no way you can keep going with him with this kind of roster that they've invested in.
Yeah.
I don't love Tua, but I think he could do it. I think he can get them to 9 wins, 10 wins, and I think they can sneak into the playoffs as a 7th seed. So I would lean the over on this one just because I think the talent around the roster is there. And I think Tua if you believe any of these offseason reports, training camp reports, he looks great. We've seen some of the throws he's made, but it's training camp. You don't want to put too much stock in it, but I think it's enough to, sneak over the over.
And I think that plays to exactly what Ben said. Like, it's just such a hard line. They really, I guess odds makers are pretty good at their job if they can set lines like this.
Yeah.
And, you hit the nail on the head. If Tua can't do it with this roster, he can't do it with any roster. Like, there's no excuses anymore. You have the pieces. You have to go out and execute. And, I guess you're getting another new offensive scheme. So maybe that's a little bit of a knock. But frankly, I think that's kind of a myth about guys that are like, oh, you need multiple years. I think you need the right scheme. I think a lot of guys put the scheme ahead of the player. And hopefully, I think Kyle Shanahan's biggest asset has always been he's made his scheme fit his players, fit his personnel to a T. And if Mike McDaniel's learned anything from Shanahan, that's what it needs to be, is when you have these players, putting them in the best position to succeed and using your system to highlight them. So I'm excited to watch. I know Ben said he was hanging on the edge of his seat. I'm going to be too. So.
I got a question for you guys. Is Tua, I didn't even mention him because he's so forgettable. Is Tua the best quarterback on the team to quarterback this team this year?
I mean, he's got the most upside, right?
Right.
Is he the best guy? That's the question. I mean, Teddy is Teddy. I mean, we know what you're going to get out of him. It's extremely average. He'll have some good games. He'll have some bad games. He'll completely whiff and just not care about some tackles when he fumbles the ball over the other team. He'll have that stuff. But Tua is a guy who has the talent to get you over the top. Will that talent come out on a consistent basis? Who knows? But at least the talent is there. That talent is not there with Teddy. So, I mean, what's the point, right? Are you trying to be middling average team, or are you trying to win a Super Bowl?
Oh, you got to give him credit for going for it. That is for sure. I recently wrote up Tua the under for Tua's interceptions, not because obviously I don't have that much faith in Miami, but because I could see Teddy coming in and stealing some snaps, if not starts, from him. And he's kind of risk averse anyway.
An abysmal situation if they just Fitzpatricked him again in his third season in the league. I mean, that would just be over. That would just be over for him in Miami if that happened, and that would be tough to see.
To coin a phrase from the old guys that work here at IN, he can't get Wally pipped again. Well, I like Fitzpatrick better, and frankly, as a Broncos fan and a Denver native, I pray they play Teddy Bridgewater. I would love to watch that train wreck. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I think I agree. I think frankly, Tua, I think the biggest thing about Tua this season is you have a question to answer. So you need this question answered because you spent the draft capital on him. Frankly, could you be wrong? No, but this is a question that they have to approach. They have to know the answer by this time next year.
And not only did they spend that capital, they passed on the capital last year when they traded away the third overall pick, when they could have had somebody like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. They traded that pick away. Yeah. And you can't do that if Tua's not the guy. That's why it was so confusing last year when they moved that pick. And then there was conversations about trying to get Deshaun Watson. Why would you move that pick if you're not confident in your quarterback? Just keep it and take Lance or Fields or Jones. So, I mean, that's part of the problem in Miami, because I don't even know how good the ownership feels about him if they're trading away picks and then still trying to talk about bringing in another quarterback. Oh, it's just a little bit of a mess there.
Oh, yeah. You know that every single day the GM is in there in the owner's office just fighting off the Tua, why did you draft Tua? Why is this? He's probably having to go to bat for him all the time. And frankly, he's not wrong, but it's also not that they don't have an option. They do. This guy needs to pan out. If he doesn't, that's a bust, and that's probably a bunch of people's jobs. So that's kind of just how it goes in the NFL. But that's enough on a pretty middling Dolphins team. So
that's the kind of team they are, though. We got to spend excess time on them because they're so enigmatic.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the same line of about 8.5 games, we have the New England Patriots. What are we thinking about this one, Vishaal?
Not a fan of this team. Talking about, acquisitions and losses, I think one of the bigger acquisitions was not a player loss, but a coaching loss. And losing Josh McDaniels from this offensive staff, I think, is going to hurt more than people want to, talk about. Maybe bringing in Matt Patricia to be your OC. I don't know if there could be a bigger disaster potentially happening right now in the league. I wouldn't want that guy calling my defense, let alone my offense. I mean, I don't know what Bill is thinking out there. Obviously, he's a genius.
I wouldn't want that guy calling me a lunch order.
No, absolutely not. Take your pencil out of your ear and learn how to coach.
Matt Patricia calling a lunch order? He looks like he's very good at calling lunch orders, doesn't he?
Oh, no.
Damn.
Just saying. I mean, that guy looks like he knows how to order lunch.
Damn.
I mean, Mac Jones was very impressive last year. I don't think anybody saw that kind of play come out of him. So I'm very impressed with what he did, and I think he can still be a good quarterback. I just don't think there's any sort of talent around him on offense. You lose J.C. Jackson on defense. I mean, you're just losing a lot of stuff this year for this New England team. I'm just not seeing how they're going to be successful and find any way to win 9 games. It's just not nearly good enough of a roster. So I'm going to take the under on this one.
And frankly, if you approach it too from the viewpoint that they overachieved last year, this number looks way out of whack because they did overshoot expectations in a year that most had them pinned to be down. And like you just highlighted, they lost more. So it's hard for, at least for me, to get extremely comfortable, on board with them doing much. Now, it's not to say that it's, again, kind of like the Pittsburgh conversation we had earlier, where you have a team that is extremely well run and they might not have the best roster, but that might be something they get, a few wins out of. But again, like I said, I'm not really that comfortable. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable saying that they're not going to hit 9 here. So what are you thinking when you see this one, Ben?
I'm with you. I actually have written here comfortably under. I think I've bet 2 of these before doing my research. I bet them pre-draft because I try to go out and find the best lines, and that's how you can get the best value. Shop early. But yeah, this one is rough. And you say they're well managed. Are they well managed anymore? They've been making some questionable decisions for quite some time.
Brady is not there to make up for some of the mistakes.
That's a good point.
Made.
Maybe they were never well managed, and it was just like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Right. Thing. I mean, Cole Strange is going to be a good player, but he's that high. Tyquan Thornton, N'Keal Harry. I mean, the list is long. Kyle Duggar's pretty good, but I mean, Belichick can turn a lot of people into good defensive players into good players. I mean, you mentioned the loss of J.C. Jackson. Their corners are Malcolm Mitchell and Jalen Mills. I mean, that can't cut it in this division. What are they going to do against Miami? It's going to be rough. I'm glad you mentioned the coaching. I don't know how or what they're going to come out looking like. I mean, maybe go draft Ramon Stevenson. I haven't said it out loud. Ramondre Stevenson. I think I got it right. In fantasy, draft that guy because I envision a lot of short passes probably because what else is going to draw up? It feels like they care. When you look at the roster, it feels like they care about running and short passing. And it's just a very strange roster. And I believe they're 5th or 6th or 7th in total cap spent. So they've spent a lot of money on this roster to get it to what it is, and it's not it.
And they're not spending in the right places, though. I mean, if they want to spend that money, you're going to have to go out and get that receiver that you just have not been doing for the past decade. It feels like you've just been taking these guys in the draft, but you're going to have to break the bank for a receiver at some point to give Mac Jones something to throw at, definitely a weird one.
Yeah, definitely absent many weapons. They're, losing people in the wrong places. They've always been notorious for zigging or for zagging while everybody zigs. And I think in a league where receiver play, cornerback play, quarterback play is at an all-time premium, they're leaning away from it. They're letting, all-time good or all-pro corners walk. They're letting, they have no options to throw to. They had a game where Mac Jones threw the ball 3 freaking times. Now, granted, it might have been, weather conditioned, but that is unheard of in the modern NFL. And that should kind of be alarming because there's a reason why people evolve to this way. The NFL game is so min-maxed that you can't really afford to be playing catch up. And I think that they might be looking at that.
I'm glad you said min-max. I was just thinking they have a bunch of C players. That's all C players.
Exactly. Yeah. And I hope they can make middling guys into great players in their roles. And sure, they've been able to do that, but it's their roster doesn't scare anybody. Yeah.
Tom Brady, you don't have Tom Brady to make all those guys, all those C's into B's and just get through every year.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. And frankly, a quarterback bails you out of so many situations that it's not all that surprising that this is the situation they're looking at right now. So, but to move on to wait, did we skip somebody? No. Jets. Oh, it's just I'm not used to the Pats being so far down. I was the Jets were obviously at the bottom, but I was like, there's usually somebody between them.
I thought this was just a Jets are bad joke.
The Jets are bad, and they are a joke. So I don't need to make jokes about them when they're already funny enough. But so the Jets line of 5.5. V, what do you make? What do you make of the lowly Jets, V?
I don't know how long it can be saying lowly anymore. I mean, I don't know. They've been making some moves, right? They're getting weapons, they're getting players. I don't
That's the
hate what
story,
they've been.
apparently.
I don't hate the players that they're getting and drafting and signing. I mean, I like Garrett Wilson. I like Elijah Moore. They got players out there. They got weapons. Brashad, or what's the running back's name? Why am I blanking? The one they just got, Brees Hall. I mean,
Brees Hall.
Found a lot of people liked him coming into this draft. I mean, there's players there. They might be a year or two away, but I don't know how bad this team is and this roster construction is. I like Saleh as a coach. Tough to say on this one. I would probably stay away just because I could see a situation where they can win 6-7 games if Zach Wilson is good. He doesn't have to be great for them to win 6-7 games. I think that's how much I like the rest of the roster. I think if he's just competent, I think they can pull out 6-7 games. But if he's not, obviously that's going to drop. So I might lean slightly over just because I'm a little bullish on some of the things they've been doing. But
And it's such a low number, and I love how you said, you pull out, they have all these players that I like. I should like them.
If they were any other franchise besides the New York Jets,
watch out for them.
Probably taking the over, right?
Exactly. So, I agree. I think that when you see a lot of their players, you think I should like them, but it's kind of those sum of its parts type thing where like it just doesn't equal the sum of its parts. And I think usually that analogy is done for the opposite, but I think it still works the same. The Jets, they have these pieces. I hope they can be better. We'll see if the MILF Hunter can bring it in and figure it out and make something happen. I like his raw talent. I think that Zach can potentially be a good quarterback, but we haven't seen any of that so far. And it almost seems like the Jets' curse is washed off on him. I say this a lot with young quarterbacks. I think that you can easily ruin a young quarterback by not putting them in positions to succeed right away, because it's a lot of confidence. It's a lot of believing that you can get away with some stuff that you couldn't. And so we've actually even seen some of the young quarterbacks or younger, I can't say that they're young anymore, but like, Mahomes wasn't able to get away with some of the stuff he used to get away with. Sometimes bad habits start to catch up with you, but if you're not able to build some confidence, you're not going to get to the point where you can have bad habits because you're out of the league too quickly. So that'll be an interesting storyline to follow, is what happens over there, because they should have some pieces. So what do you...
They had 3 first-round picks this year. They should definitely have a lot of talent this year.
Yeah, right. I mean, hopefully, that's the point of the draft is, give you first dibs, and you got 3 of them, so you should have it. So what do you think when you see NYJ, Ben?
I agree. I like a lot of what you guys said. You summed a lot of it up pretty well. Like, I like a lot of their players, but it's still the Jets. And is the sum of their parts going to add up? And one thing I will disagree with you on, Mason, is that I think he was put in some decent situations last year and he fell flat on his face. I've never seen a top pick fail at throwing bubble screens. Bubble screens. He was dirty bubble screens. I've never seen that in the league. Never.
Ben, I had to grade a couple of the Jets games this year for our friends over at Pro Football Focus. And I can tell you that some of his throws were throws that I went I had to rewind and double take to be like, okay, am I missing something here? Is he thinking that something's happening here? Is there a miscommunication here? Because that was one of the worst throws I've ever seen in my entire life. And he had that more than a few times. And like you said, things like missing bubble screens. So I don't necessarily disagree with you.
He was the 2nd overall pick.
Yeah.
And when you look at speaking of PFF grades, you look at PFF grades and you look at the bottom, and he's there, and so is the number 1 overall pick. But when you watch the 2 play, the number 1 overall pick looks the part. He goes through his reads. He does things a quarterback does. He can make the throws. He's big. He has a feel in the pocket. I don't see any of that with Zach Wilson. And you're saying that you could see them eking it out. And we look at their schedule. Where do the wins go? I want to give them some credit. I like Elijah Vera Tucker very much. But they could start. Saleh could. I don't know how patient they are in Newton, but Saleh could be 0-5. You got Ravens at Browns, home for Bengals, at Steelers. That could be a win, but it's the Jets versus the Steelers. I mean, it could go either way. The home to the Dolphins, at Packers, at Broncos. I mean, you maybe have one win through the first 7 games. Maybe. I mean, maybe if you get lucky, you beat one of those teams and you're 2-5. I don't see it, and or is he going to be in the confident positions early in the season to build the confidence? I don't know. And we've already lost Becton. They're bringing in Dwayne Brown, I believe, off the street, or at least they brought him in the building for a look. But is that going to be enough? There's just too many question marks. And then you look further down the schedule. I think it comes down to how you feel about them against the NFC North. And I do not like them against the NFC North. I mean, everyone's darling is the Lions. And I mean, who do you like in that matchup? I like the Vikings over them. I don't see it with the Jets. I think under. I'm not necessarily running out to bet it, but I wouldn't feel uncomfortable betting it. Maybe because it's the Jets, but I have my doubts.
Yeah, and I can definitely see what you're saying too, because like we said, it's like the two sides of the one coin where is this team going to equal its parts? And they have some stuff that they can be good with, but also, just like you said, it's a tough road. They have a tough schedule, and they're not really looking down the barrel of many wins. I mean, we'll see. Like, if the things do work out, they should be more competitive in some of these games and maybe even win a couple of them. And maybe catch a team sleeping here and there.
They did it a couple times last year, right?
Right,
and
that's a
Cincinnati sleeping, Tennessee sleeping.
Right, and that's a tough draw because it's not like last year's Jags, where last year's Jags had, I think the line was 4.5, and they fell under that. So it's possible. At 6, it's a little bit tougher to draw that out. And just like when you said, Ben, is one of these guys played the part, one of them did not. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think we've hit the nail on the head. And I hate to continue to be like quarterback. But if your quarterback takes those steps forward, like, you have the potential to do it. It's a low number. But then again, I don't know that we've seen a whole lot. So it'll be interesting to watch.
I think if you're looking for to bet the over and you're looking for the Jets to catch teams sleeping, then I mean, Zach Wilson's shown he can, sleeping. That's like, he's pretty good at that, right?
Ben, this is a family program. This is a family program.
What is it with Jets quarterbacks and just crazy stories coming out early in the season? I don't even know.
I can't get enough of those memes. I really can't. They're NFL Twitter.
The Darnold memes are still funny. I still love seeing those whenever they pop up randomly.
Did you see the TikTok his mom posted?
No, and you'll have to DM it to me later.
I don't have it. I don't know how I saw it, but I don't even have TikTok. But it made it on my Twitter feed, and it's her with one of her friends. And yeah, it's a funny one. Yeah.
Yeah, no details needed. They might demonetize us before. I already told you that this show was going to go off the rails.
One and done.
So we have the odds to win. I think that obviously we're all in agreement, but no one's going to touch it. Bills minus 200. Yays all around.
Yeah, that's actually not a terrible price because you look at that in terms of implied odds. That's only 67%, and you would think that should be probably closer to 80-85% chances of winning the division. Yeah. So I mean, I actually think that's not a terrible price,
and it's
even
not.
though you're laying so much.
It's really not. Yeah. So that'll be. I mean, I don't see anybody coming out of left field. I think we can move on past that one. Down to our next division, the AFC South. And to start off, we have another bottom feeder in the league, the Houston Texans at 4.5 wins. Ben, what do you make of this poor Texans team?
Yeah, they're not very good. I kind of think it's hard to go under here, but as we go through the divisions, you'll find out that I like some of these teams a lot more than them. And so I kind of have to go under by default. I mean, they have a few good pieces. I like Jonathan Greenard. I mean, everybody with a brain, I feel like Stingley. You can throw out some of those years or the bad year or whatever. I think Davis Mills was a little bit overrated at times last year. However, I mean, he's going to rack up some fantasy points, and they're just going to be bad. And it's going to be listless football. Very we got a Bears fan here. I mean, Lovie Smith. This is kind of like a perfect way for it's kind of a good team for him to coach. It's kind of like there's middle of the road. We're gonna hang our head on defense. No pressure. Yeah. Twilight of his career, maybe. I don't know what's going on in him in his life, but easily under. I'm not going to bet it, but I just don't have any confidence.
So all in the same show, Ben has gotten a raise for his Rashad Bateman love and also gotten fired for his hate of the Texans. Steve, I will send him out ASAP. You don't have to worry about that. No, I'm just joking.
Wait, they have fans? I haven't met one. I want to meet one. I'm sure they're good. They've got to be better than Cowboys fans.
Texans jerseys. Anyway,
I don't know that Steve would categorize himself as a fan, frankly. So I think an observer, a over casual observer, I think is what Steve might categorize himself as.
How much did the David Johnson trade hurt him? That is a gauge of how much of a fan he is.
You'll have to ask him about that. It might still be an open wound for him. We'll have to see. And you speak of Davis Mills and our guy Jason Draven. We had our dynasty startup auction recently, and our guy Jason Draven. You only get so many 4-year contracts. Our guy Jason Draven saved his single 4-year contract to like the 18th round to get Davis Mills.
What?
Yeah.
You can put it on anybody?
You could put it on anybody. Most people use it on like your first round pick because you want to lock them up or your youngest best player. I know Vishaal actually had a great strategy of holding on to his until he really found a nice young player and hammered the rest of us with it. But I think our guy Jason also thought he was doing the same thing, except for his guy happened to be Davis Mills. So
wow.
We could spend a long time discussing some of the strategies we saw in that draft. I'm not even going to get into the bidding war we saw for Mitch Trubisky. That was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
We needed to, honestly, Steve, if you're watching this, we needed to televise that. If you have a screen recording of that,
he sat behind Josh Allen, guys. He sat behind Josh Allen.
We had a pretty wild. There wasn't a whole lot of rhyme or reason to a lot of the things that we were doing, but I think that at one point when you get a bunch of really smart football people in the same room, we start trying to like game each other with things, and I think one of them ends up being we're going to drive up the price on Mitchell Trubisky and see who's the last one to click the button, kind of thing. So it became an interesting draw. But anyway, back to the topic on hand. V, what are you thinking about this Texans team? 4.5 at.
I mean, if we're talking about how are we finding wins for the Jets, I mean, how are we finding the wins for the Texans to hit the over on this one?
Yeah.
Nothing against them, nothing against their players. I think they're playing as well as they can, and they will be playing to their ability, but their ability just isn't going to be very high. Unfortunately, this is going to be a long rebuild, I think, in Houston. Unfortunately, they just have too little or all over the depth chart. So 4.5 is small, but are you really going to bet on them to win 5 games? I just don't see it. So let's just make this a quick one and stick with the under.
Yeah, and just like we said just a second ago, the Jags were in this kind of position last year, 4.5 wins, and they hit the under at 3. So you still can do it when you have to. When it's all said and done, those 3 wins were still kind of come from behind. And frankly, the biggest difference between, say, the Texans and the Jets is I don't like the players on the Texans. None of them, the roster doesn't particularly scare me. I'm not very high on any of them, but just like you had put out, I'm high on a number of the Jets' young players. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch. And yeah, the Texans are going to be in for a long rebuild. I'd surprised if they hit over. This line could have been 2.5 and probably still been competitive. So
Not
onto
out of the realm of possibility.
right. Onto a much more competitive team. We have the Indianapolis Colts, and this line has fluctuated a little bit. It's moving. You can find it at 9.5, or if you can find it at 9.5, I'd go ahead and take it because I was seeing it move towards 10 quite a bit. So, what is everybody thinking on that one? V, we'll start with you. What are you thinking about the Colts here?
I think they're definitely the best team in the division. I don't think it's going to be that close this year. I think they're not necessarily the most talented team out there, but I think they have enough pieces compared to the rest of this division that they should finish what they were trying to do last year and actually close it out in a successful manner in terms of, winning the division at the end of the season. I don't even know how to talk about Carson Wentz, so maybe we'll just save that for next week. But whatever he was doing last year was just a little bit all over the place. So bringing in someone like Matt Ryan should stabilize things for the most part. Sounds like Pittman he's not the sexiest name out there, but he does his job. He's a big target. He makes plays. He's going to catch the ball down the field. They have a lot of guys in the receiver room. It's tough to figure out who's going to be good, who's not going to be good, but there's a lot of talent there. You like Jonathan Taylor. You like some of the pieces they have on defense. I mean, I would be shocked if they won a playoff game this year, but they should definitely be there. They should definitely be the 4th seed in the AFC and just having a little trouble getting there. So I don't hate going over on this one.
And V, you could save the Carson Wentz talk. I know Ben is gonna have a take on Carson Wentz here. Ben, what are you thinking when you see this Colts team and their new acquisition at quarterback?
Well, they were right there last year, and Carson Wentz sunk the ship, so to speak. And whether it be for his actual play or I think you can attribute some of it, and I don't want to bring up everybody's favorite old topic, but COVID and not getting the vaccination. He missed practices down the stretch because of his choice not to get vaccinated. And that you do you, it's whatever, but not being able to practice definitely affected him in those games. And it showed. And to get a professional in the building like Matt Ryan that's going to be able to maximize at least a solid percentage more of what Carson Wentz has been able to do. I mean, you can just see it in the game logs for Nyheim Hines, for instance. Nyheim Hines was a useful player 2 years ago when you had a quarterback that utilized the diverse screen game that the Colts had, whereas Carson Wentz literally refused to do it. And you have Frank Reich in the media actually saying that, which is kind of strange that you would have someone saying it that plainly, the head coach about a former player. But they've been very on the nose with their criticisms for Carson Wentz, and you got to give them credit for cutting ties and getting him out of town because they did invest quite a bit into him. I'm going over. It's relatively easy over. Like V said, they seem to be the best team in the league, and they were right there. How could they not get over the hump? It will be interesting, though. He wants to be called Shaquille now. But so if Shaquille's not playing, we've seen how this defense goes, and they don't have Matt Eberflus anymore. So I kind of feel like that is a little bit of a downgrade for them. And how good can Stephon Gilmore be? If he can play and be some semblance of his old self, this defense is going to be solid, and they're going to be in the playoffs. But if neither of those guys is on the field, this defense is – you might see them going up and down the field. It could be – I feel way more comfortable betting Colts offensive overs for futures bets than I would the win total over. And I actually could see them winning a game in the playoffs. It just completely matchup based. They have to get the right team, but they're not somebody like, I don't know. I always think of the Andy Dalton led Bengals, where that was the easiest bet in the world. Like they will not win a playoff game, and we know they will not win a playoff game no matter who
get
they
intercepted by JJ Watt and then game over.
Fill in the blank. Intercepted by fill in the blank. Yeah, right. And pick your flavor. But yeah, over. I could see him getting to 12. I really could. But it just depends how it shakes out.
Yeah, and I think that I love your evaluation of the quarterback room in your write-up, Ben, because I actually have kind of I felt like a crazy person on a lone island a little bit with Carson Wentz for a little while because our colleague over at PFF, Seth Galina, had put out a great little piece, a little tweet a couple of years back, really highlighting, that Wentz isn't a horribly stupid player. It's not that he doesn't know what to do. He just sometimes doesn't want to do it, and then frankly will miss the broadside of a barn. He's just horribly inaccurate. And when you combine the, not want to go through your reads in the right progression, and you're not as accurate as you need to be, like, these are things that show you why, hey, you are a number 2 pick, but you've bounced around the league because you have talent, but you've got a lot of red flags too. And I agree. I think that the addition of Ryan there is going to be a lot better. So I'm right there in lockstep with you guys on potentially an over. I like it around 12 too. Definitely matchup based because they want to take the air out of the ball and they're not going to necessarily throw it around so much, but they can now when they need to.
I like their set of receivers too. I've always been on Paris Campbell. I hope he can play because I just loved that. I'd love to see him be on the field with a quarterback that could utilize this skill set. And to talk about Carson Wentz ignoring something, I would love to be able to go back and look at all of the wheel routes that were open and to see what percentage of the wheel routes he threw, because he would refuse to throw an open wheel route to whoever it was, whether it be Taylor or Nyheim Hines. It was almost always open too.
As a Nyheim Hines manager in fantasy, I can't tell you how many times I screamed at those. At those.
He's wide open.
So, yeah, I totally get it. So we're going to move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 6.5 wins. This is a polarizing team. They have some pieces. Ben, what are you making of this Jaguars team off the rip?
Well, it's not polarizing to me. I like the Jaguars a lot. This is one of the teams I mentioned that I bet as soon as the lines came out. Actually, as soon as it was more of as soon as Doug Peterson was announced, because I just wanted to make sure that they put at least somebody with some semblance of a brain in there. Not that I'm some Doug Peterson stan, but he is a vast upgrade over the garbage fire that was Urban Meyer. The line has since moved it to 6.5. Now I've got it at 6. I think you look at the quarterback and there was so much carnage around him last year and he still did things. And not only that, he kind of reminded me of a kid playing a video game or say Madden and you're down by a lot and you're just going to try all these random things. Because why not? Because this is the time to try it because I'm losing and it doesn't make a difference whether I lose by 50 or I lose by 2. And this is my chance. I'm going to try I'm going to throw this go ball into double coverage. I'm going to see if this guy can go up. And he was still doing the right things. I liked it a lot. A little bit of my handicap starting out was assuming that they were going to make what I thought was the right pick at number 1 in Aiden Hutchinson. But maybe Trayvon Walker can step in. He looked pretty good his first game, but whatever, preseason. I like the Jaguars. I think this is an easy over bet. I've already got money invested into it. I got money across the board. You can call me the Jaguars man. I actually think they might have a shot at the playoffs. I think 9 wins is in the calculation. I think it's possible. They need a lot of help.
Ben, did you just say 9 wins?
It's possible. It's possible.
I love it. Go ahead. Keep going. Sorry, not to interrupt. I just am super excited to think that this team could make the jump forward because I agree with you. When you look at the way Trevor Lawrence played, it wasn't quite as bad as the numbers would indicate. Now, it wasn't great, and he has a lot of room to improve, but there's a number of times where you saw I don't have an earphone on the field. I can't hear what he's saying. But when you see him going like this and talking to his wide receiver after a play where the incompletion or the interception is way far away from the target point, you can tell somebody messed up there. And it probably wasn't Trevor Lawrence because he's telling his receiver where he was supposed to be going. So there's a number of times you saw that last year where he was left out to dry by his offense and hopefully they can take some steps forward now. And I'm excited to see it. I was actually a little surprised when I saw it at 6.5 because, like you had said, we had talked about this a little bit earlier behind the scenes, and it was at, I think, 5.5 and 6 when we were kind of talking about it. So it's interesting to see it continue to move up. And you planted your flag on this, Ben, pretty early on in the process. It sounds like a lot of the public is also, or even some sharps. I would imagine some sharp money is probably coming in there.
Yeah, gotten some good cleave
that.
on it. I think one thing that has to be mentioned is the scheme. Like he's going to utilize the frame and the speed. That he's a 6'6" quarterback with speed. And if you think about when Doug Peterson was successful in Philly, it was putting the linebacker in the zone read in a bind and then building off of that. And I think that's what Trevor Lawrence utilized a lot at Clemson, and I think it's going to work really well this year. The defense has to cooperate. They're relying on some young linebackers. Can the corners take the next step? I kind of like Tyson Campbell's game, but yeah, 6.5. That's low. I like that a lot, especially in this division.
Yeah. V, what do you see when you see this Jags team? Are you as bullish as Ben on them, or are you a little more hesitant? Because it's hard. I mean, as much as I'm also bullish on them, they're still the Jaguars. I have friends that are Jags fans that I just flat out cannot let get any ground here. So, so it's hard to give them too much gas. What are you thinking on this though, Ben? Or I mean, Vishaal?
I think this is probably going to be our first big disagreement. I think we've been aligned so far, but I'm not really feeling too much on Jacksonville right now. I do like their defense. I mean, what they did late in the season, especially that Colts game that we talked about before, I was very impressed with what their defense did. They deserve a lot of credit for shutting down Wentz and the rest of that offense, despite it being a Week 18 game where they were completely lost season, and they still came out and played well. They've added pieces there, Devin Lloyd, Trayvon Walker. They signed Darius Williams. So I'm not too, down on their defense, but offensively, we're really talking about Christian Kirk and Zay Jones being your main wide receivers, and we're talking about 9 wins and maybe playoffs. I'm just not seeing it. And yes, Trevor Lawrence is good. I think he can take a next step, but he just doesn't have weapons. How are we going to throw Evan Ingram out there as your top tight end and just be like, go out there and do something? There's no weapons there besides Etienne and Robinson, it seems like. And we want to talk about what Peterson did in Philly, but I mean, Wentz had Alshon Jeffrey, he had Zach Ertz, he had some nice running backs. I just don't see the talent similarity at all here in Jacksonville. I don't like what they did, spending all that money on Christian Kirk, who's still a very unproven wide receiver, and just telling him to go be your wide receiver 1, and then pairing him with Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. I mean, I don't like their talent on offense besides Etienne and Robinson at all, so I'm going to take the under.
But they gamed the system by paying Christian Kirk all this money, says Twitter, somebody typing on Twitter right now, adding you.
Thankfully, the games aren't played on spreadsheets and played on the actual field.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
overpaid for Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, but they're actually going to put up numbers unlike Christian Kirk.
Right, exactly. It's gonna be a fun one to watch. So
yeah, I invested in it, hoping that I think they had either the number 1 or the number 2, along with the Chargers, amount of cap space available, and they obviously spent it. And I don't like the way they spent it. I thought they would do. I don't have any faith in Trent Baalke, but I thought they would do a little bit better job than they did. However, they did not. But I don't think this offense is that reliant on a wide receiver 1. And I think that they can get it done with what they have. And I just think it's going to be a lot of running the ball, a lot of to the side, and a lot of dink and dunk, and Marvin Jones on the sideline. Hopefully we'll just throw up a 50-50 ball. It's not going to be the most innovative or exciting offense, but I think it can be productive.
Well, and our guy Jack Javanaugh 87 on the Twitter. If anybody's not following him, go follow. He's one of the best followers on the entire damn site. You can go to the bank with that one. Jack has planted his flag in Travis Etienne as I said it wrong, and he's gonna skewer me later. But he's planted his flag in him, so he's big time on that, and he is right there with you that these backs are going to be a huge piece of this offense. And they're going to have to be.
They are.
So it's going to be an interesting draw. So
I love Travis Etienne, but when his ADP on Underdog is in the mid 30s, and I can get a guy who might be getting as many snaps as him in the 130s, 140s, I'm sorry. I think Javen Robinson is my number 1 owned running back on Underdog for best ball drafts. I have a lot of him. He's back already practicing.
That's not a bad player to have a lot of exposure to. So So let's see. Last but certainly not least, we have the Tennessee Titans, 9.5. V, what are you thinking about the Titans here?
Well, if anybody read my piece on teams who I think could finish with the worst record in the league, my long shot pick on there was, strangely, the Titans. I'm very much out on this team. I just do not understand the A.J. Brown trade at all and why they could not sign him and extend him. It just makes zero sense to me. This is a team that...
He didn't get that much. He didn't. It's not like he got so much more than the rest of the class. Like,
not at all.
He got paid
he
on
even
par.
tweeted that everybody got around the same money, and he was the only one who got traded.
It's like
this team has done very well in the regular season the last couple of years, but their playoff performances have been terrible. I think they've scored like a combined 30, 35 points or something in their last two playoff games. They need offense, and trading away your best offensive player just does not make sense to me. Yes, Traylon Burks might be good, but he's still a first-round pick, a rookie. He's not going to be anywhere close to what A.J. Brown could have been this year. And throwing Ryan Tannehill out there with subpar talent is just a recipe, I think, for a disaster. I would be shocked if this team came anywhere close to the playoffs. I think this is an easy under for me. I like the rest of the talent they have. I think they do have pieces elsewhere. But, Derrick Henry is getting older. He had a big injury last year. I just think Ryan Tannehill might fall apart this year, unfortunately. I'm glad that he had a resurgence here in Tennessee, but that AJ Brown trade will just never make sense to me. I just don't like it, so I'm going to take the under.
Yeah, it's impossible to justify. It's like on a team that's, I don't know. I hated that trade. I don't know why they would do that, because they are at a disadvantage already as a team that continues to feed the run game when we have a league that is very, very big into the pass game, and you get rid of the saving grace of your pass game, which was honestly, nobody talks about the saving grace of your offense. Yeah, we love King Henry. How many wins do they have if they're not throwing the ball as well as they were with A.J. Brown? So I'm right there with you. I agree. This is going to be a hard fade for me. They've kind of been a fade for me for a little while, but it's mainly because I really don't like the antiquated way of playing football, the ground and pound. Like, I think that there's an advantage if you can do it, if you have the roster to do it. Yes, that's an advantage in the playoffs when it gets cold too. But I think that you have to have a really deep 53 to be able to defend and run the rock efficiently. And I don't see that 53 for them here. And I think Ben's probably going to be right on the same boat. What do you say about this, Ben? Or do you disagree with us? I mean, you can definitely call us stupid. I mean, you just won't be allowed back on the show. But no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll call you stupid when you deserve it. I will. This is not one of those spots, though. Not at all. I being a Jaguars man myself, I kind of thought this would be an easy under for me, but after I broke it down, it wasn't. I think earlier in the offseason, it was a lot easier before some of the pieces came together when Traylon Burks was out of shape. And I think it's kind of materialized for them, crystallized. But I'm still going under. I wrote up the Derrick Henry under for his yardage prop. I'm a little bit nervous because it's tough going against the King. But like V said, I think some of the tread is off the tire, if you will.
Yep.
Will Tannehill fall off a cliff? I don't know. But he seemingly fell off a cliff last year in that playoff game. That was a really bad performance with A.J. Brown on the field.
Yeah.
And how do you get rid of A.J. Brown, one of the best receivers in the league? It's almost like, and I just made this up, so bear with me, but it's almost like baby Belichick syndrome. It's like, you know what? My best player, I'm going to get rid of him and show everybody. Why pay him, And it feels like a lot of these Belichick disciples kind of have this baby Belichick syndrome where they make these head-scratching decisions, and a lot of them haven't come out well. I'm a little bit apprehensive about going against Vrabel because I believe in Vrabel's skills and being able to, like, coach week in and week out from a matchup standpoint and make it tough on people. But I can't with the Jaguars, man. And I'm a Jaguars man. Even taking the Jaguars out of this though, no, under. Under. Have to.
I think it's easy to see for sure. And, the division itself is not that tough, but they're getting worse. So it's not really like an easy. They're getting older. They're getting worse on the roster. It's hard to justify double-digit wins for this team. It's hard to justify them really going over 500. So I guess we'll kind of see when it really shakes out. And as we go through the odds on this division, the Colts are actually a minus 125 to win. Tennessee, I can actually pull this up here real quick. Let's see here.
Watch out for Jacksonville, plus 700.
Jacksonville plus 700. And, if you're as bullish as Ben, that's not a horrible line when you look at the rest of this division. At minus 125, the Colts are obviously the heavy favorite. But there's just not a lot of value there, especially since, like we talked about with the Bills, I could see another team maybe pushing them a little bit. I don't think they're quite as good, but, they should win the division by all accounts. But if you're high on one of these other teams, like maybe Ben is, you might also go in and pick the Jags. So that'll be interesting. All right. On to the last division of the night. I had to double check. I was like, wait a second. How many did we go through? The last division of the night, one that's very close to my heart. Now, boys, for starters, we have the Denver Broncos. 10.5 wins. Only good things. If you're not, you're definitely not coming back on my show, Ben. I'm just kidding. Ben, what do you make of the Broncos?
This is a tough one.
Talk nice to me, Ben. Talk nice to me.
It's tough because I still have those wounds as a Packer fan from the 97 Super Bowl. So it's tough for me to talk good about the Broncos being an 11-point favorite and then blowing it to you guys. But good job, John Elway. This is the one I struggled with as much as the Browns. I think I went back and forth on this one. They have, I think the schedule sets up well for them. It's kind of soft early and gets tougher late. And I think that's kind of what you need when you're bringing in a new quarterback and a new system as well for all the players. Jets, Ravens, Panthers out of for their original games. So it's kind of on the easy level. It's hard for me to fade all of their talent. And if everybody's on the field, they seem like they're going to be there. This is one where if it's 10.5, I'm not ever betting at 10.5. I would shop as hard as I can for the right line here. If it's 10.5, I would never bet over. But if it's 10, you get to put the push equity. I could see the bet in the over. But so I'm going to go over, but line dependent. Under if it's 10.5. Under and I won't. Yeah, this is so close, and it's more of a reflection of the rest of the division. There's so much unknown here. I'm not necessarily the biggest Russell Wilson guy. I'm a big Patrick Surtain Jr. guy, or the second. I think he could have a breakout year, but maybe I kind of like Jerry Jeudy over Courtland Sutton. I feel more comfortable with these calls than I do bet any sort of over-under line bet. But it's going to be a fun watch. That's for sure. You can put them in the Dolphins category as a must-watch TV. Get your popcorn ready.
And you learn quick, Ben. Yeah, talk nice to the host. It's going to get you more invites back. No, I totally I get exactly what you're saying. And here in town, I live in Denver, by the way, for any of our degenerates watching at home. I live in Denver, and of course, the vibe around town is very positive Broncos because there has not been a quarterback in this town for a number of years. The pain goes deep. It doesn't go as deep as some other franchises. I'm sorry.
You
Vishaal,
just had Peyton Manning like 10 years ago. Let's calm down.
I know. I'm so sorry, B.
Spoiled.
But so I hear it from all sides. But I try to get across to people in this city that this division is very, very tough, and that going under this season is not necessarily the end of the world. Your line was like 5 or 6 wins last year. you're almost double it now. So approach it that you're making the steps forward and that you can be good. You have a nice roster. You have a lot of good pieces. You do have a new coaching staff. It'll be interesting to watch how this all plays out. But the sky's not falling if they don't hit this under. And this is a very, very tough division that could potentially see 3 teams go to the playoffs. So it'll be interesting. And, you know, I'm obviously going to have on my blue and orange every weekend. So go Broncos before we get too far ahead of ourselves. I'm going to be taking the over, as well as the rest of Broncos country. Let's ride. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no.
I had to fit one in there. V, my brother, tell me my Broncos are going to be good. If you reinforce me, V, that tells me that it's real and that this is magic. Okay. But it's okay if not. It's okay if not. You know that I respect your decision. Just know you're going to hurt me dearly.
I'll keep that in mind. Maybe. I think there was a lot of talk last year that this was a Super Bowl ready roster that was a quarterback away. So when you go ahead and make that move for a Super Bowl quality quarterback like Russell Wilson, it's very understandable for the hype to be there and for the win total to be as high as it is. I think this is a great roster. I love the weapons on offense. Sutton, Judy, KJ Hamler. They got 2 very good backs. They have a line that's become stable over the years. And they have so many pieces on defense. I mean, it's just crazy. Even though they lost Von Miller last year, I still love a lot of what they have on defense, especially in the secondary with Pat Surtain and some of the other guys they got back there. The only thing that would hold you back is what we talked about, is how difficult the division is. This is the hardest division in football. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close. I think we could potentially, for the first time in league history, see every team in a division make the playoffs. I would not shock me if it happened this year with the AFC West. It's just that good of a division, so getting to 10, 11 wins will be difficult, but they have as much talent as anybody else in the league, so that's enough for me to, inch on the over.
Good. You hear that, Steve? Raises for Vishaal. A raise for Vishaal. So, yeah, I completely agree. I hate to, look at this with orange glasses, but when you do look at the roster, there are just so many pieces. Shout out Cortland Sutton, who's a friend. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is going to really blow it out. I got Cortland Sutton for a song in our Dynasty League. I won't go too much into it, but I'm looking for you this year, Cortland. Let's get big this year. So moving on, we even have to talk about the rest of the West. I kind of just want to end with the Broncos and this warm feeling that I have inside. Steve might get mad at me. Neil might, give me the finger. So I think we'll move into the Kansas City Chiefs. 10.5 wins, which frankly, I'm a little surprised is this high, because kind of the theme we've gone along is teams losing things over teams gaining things, and how bullish we are on their approach from the offseason to how they'll finish in the season. The Chiefs were one of those teams that subtracted a few pieces, yet they still have a pretty high win total. Now their win total has dropped from its previous high of 12.5 before. But 10.5 is still a sizable number. V, what do you take of the Chiefs this year?
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of my bolder takes of the season. Not only do I agree that I think the win total is too high and I'm going to take the under, but I think they can miss the playoffs. I don't see where you need to run. Losing Tyreek Hill is massive. It's just hard to understate how big of a loss that is. And they didn't really get a lot to replace him. Are we really going to trust MVS and Demarcus Robinson and all these guys to kind of take over, or McCole Hardman, I should say, to replace him?
What about Juju?
Juju's not your deep threat. He's going to be your spot guy. He's going to make your big catches. I like Sky Moore as much as the next guy, but he's a rookie. I mean, these are just a bunch of seemingly random pieces that, Mahomes is obviously very good. He can turn a lot out of nothing, and he can turn these guys into solid receivers, but compared to the talent that we just talked about in Denver and we're going to talk about in the rest of this division, Kansas City is kind of lagging behind now. I mean, it's weird to think about after what they've done the last couple of years, but it's just weird. You lose Tyrann Mathieu in the defense. I don't know. I'm not loving this team right now. I don't know why. I don't see any reason to just pencil them into the playoffs. I'm going to take the under, and I'm going to bet on them to not make the playoffs.
It's understandable. And the funny thing about it is when we look down, they are still the favorites to win the division at plus 175. Yep. And I just don't.
That's a bit nuts.
I don't exactly see it. What are you seeing when you see this team, Ben?
A little of the same, a little bit of different. I think I'm with you. I never thought I would be taking the under for the Chiefs, but I am a reluctant under. I will not be rushing out to bet it. I will not be planting my flag like V. I do not have that level of courage. I used up all of my courage on the Jaguars.
It was so brave of you to do that, by the way.
You got to pick your spots, and the Jaguars is a very good spot. I can't pass it up, I just can't. I think the reason I go over why I went over for the Broncos is because I go under for the Chiefs. And I think the difference is in the schedule and also in the defense. I think when you look at the Chiefs defense, they are depending a lot on these rookies to step in and be major contributors. And not only that, like Karlaftis, they need Carl. I think he'll be fine for what they're asking him to do. And then McDuffie on the end, they're asking a lot out of these guys, and they've had troubles with corner in the past. I mean, Charvarius Ward, I don't think McDuffie can replace him right out of the gate. Like I said, tough schedule. I mean, their original games are Bengals, Bucks, Bills. That is tough. That is very tough. I mean, Frank Clark as your other edge player, I'm not a fan of that. I kind of think their offense will be okay, though. I have enough faith in Mahomes. I actually kind of like the collection of skill sets, whereas I see what they're doing, much like I see what the Patriots are doing, but the Patriots have no splash guys, whereas I like Mahomes' ability to bend these pockets and bend these throwing lanes with these are in the RPO game. And then they have two field stretchers, and I know Hardman and I know MVS. They will never, ever replace Tyreek Hill. But I think if you have everybody healthy and you're spreading the field, Tyreek Hill was kind of up there in drops last year. I don't have the numbers with me, but I think they got rid of Tyreek Hill by design because he was kind of frustrating them in their offense, and they made the decision to get out from under it in the contract and move on and kind of spread it out. And I think they're going to go, death by 1,000 cuts. And then when everybody's going close to the line, over the top. And I think they have the
pieces. That's a little tough, though, because, I mean, Hill is that guy who kind of bailed you out. I mean, they don't win that game against Buffalo in the playoffs without Hill catching it short and just beating everybody down the sideline. His speed was just so crazy that he could just bail you out of all these late game jams that they got themselves into. And
I think they became too reliant on it, though. I think in every moment, okay, we got to get the ball to him. We got to feed Tyreek. And I think that'll be kind of freeing on the field to be able to run an RPO to either side, that you have all these options, and it can't be just Kelsey Hill. Got to get these guys their touches. It'll just be whoever's open. And I think that it'll be kind of like Mahomes will be a point guard distributing it, and everybody will have 10 points. Yeah, everybody will be in double digits. I don't think it's a winning Super Bowl formula. I think they know that as well. And when you look at their salary cap, they're kind of this is kind of like a down year for them when you look at their positioning themselves for the future. But yeah, I think the under, and I think they're going to be fine on offense because I can't doubt Mahomes. But yeah, under for sure.
And I think it goes into a lot of what we've been talking about tonight is quarterback play is so paramount in this league that when you do have a guy like Mahomes, you have an opportunity. And another topic that we've hit on is that it is a collection of parts, especially when you think about kind of what they lost on offense and what they added on offense. Now, I'm not necessarily in agreement. So specifically, I recently just actually this week, I was doing some work, and I'm reviewing some of the quarterback charting for that specific game that we were just referencing, the Bills Chiefs game. And when you look at what Tyreek Hill did to opposing defenses, the defensive schemes really do change. Teams have to adjust how they approach some of these teams. Now, there was a big storyline on how Mahomes was having trouble with too high coverages. Well, the Bills came out and do a bunch of different things to him and really caused some trouble, but then they were bailed out by a big time play. And when we looked at what they had to do, they had to dedicate a lot of attention to not only Hill, but also Kelsey. I have a big problem with, I don't think that any combination of MVS, Sky Moore, anybody that they have there is going to elicit that fear in defenses that, you know, they're hoping that it does. Hey, we still have speed. You still have to respect it. It's still going to open us up underneath for guys like Juju, guys like Travis. I just don't see it happening. At least if I'm a DC, I'm not afraid of those two guys. You're going to have to beat me a couple of times with them before I start respecting what they're going to do this season. So it's an interesting one. I mean, they could have added Jerry Rice and T.O. and anybody, and I'm still going under anyway. So
I mean, it's all relative too. I mean, just because we're saying these things that we don't think it's going to be as good doesn't mean that Mahomes is not going to have a good year and they're not going to, you know, put up some big time games and score 40 points, you know, a few times this year. It's just relative to what they've done in the past. It's just not going to be as good as it once was.
The line is still 10.5 for a reason. It's still a fairly sizable one. So
I just think if for Mahomes, if you believe Mahomes can hit all the throws on the field, I think, and with their offensive line being able to protect with the top offensive line in the league, I think if he can hit those throws and it's the time to hit those throws, those guys will have enough time to get open and they have enough talent. I don't know. That's a lot depending on Sky Moore stepping in and being something. I will say that. Yeah. I'm kind of baking him being something in too, but if he's not anything, I think they struggle. But
I like the way that you put it, is that they really did specialize these guys that they took. You have a short yardage slot that's going to really make some space underneath. Yeah, Travis Kelce is obviously an all-around monster. I mean, he's getting a little bit old. We'll see how much of a workload he can take. But they have these pieces. And then when you look at the speed of MVS, you look at the quickness and speed of Sky Moore, like, you're hoping that you can catch lightning in a bottle and that your quarterback, frankly, your quarterback can build to be this guy that should elevate all of these receivers. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if we're like, oh my gosh, look at all these guys. Look at all this fantasy value that we get from this offense. Like, that wouldn't be that surprising. But then again, I'm also, like V just said, I'm really not all that surprised if they just do not have the gas anymore. But like you said, there's a reason why it's that number, why it's 10.5, and why they've been a great team for this long. It's kind of hard to just fall off the map, essentially. And I don't see them necessarily doing
falling off the map for them would be like 8 or 9 wins, which is
right.
a lot better than most teams.
Yeah. Which is significantly better than a number of teams we've highlighted tonight. So it'll be this whole division is stacked top to bottom, and that'll be a huge thing. Another team that, I hate to say it, but are on the come up a little bit. The Las Vegas Raiders.
You can't even say it with a straight face.
Can't even say it with a straight face. I think it's the McDaniels effect. So their line is 8.5. Ben, what are you seeing out of this team?
Well, once again, a product of the division. I'm going under. Schedule Murderers Row out of the gate. I mean, Chargers, Cardinals, which you could obviously see them winning that game or going either way. Don't know how you guys feel about them, but they're kind of one of the more enigmatic teams. Coin flip for me. Titans, that could go either way. Probably V thinks, since he's down on the Titans, that they'll win that game. Broncos, Chiefs. So I think at best they're looking to come at 2-3 out of those. So that's a rough start. I mean, is Waller? What's going on with Waller? Are we looking at a lost season with Waller? It's making me nervous with him not practicing. I mean, with it coming off last year. And the defense, I can't stand by this defense. Other than edge, what do they have? And I just cannot go over with their schedule, their division. Yeah, Derek Carr can take a step, most definitely. And he should with Devontae Adams and the skill position players around him and Josh McDaniels coming in. But will it be enough to overcome everything that he's got to compete with? I'm saying no.
Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely an interesting take because, when they add such a weapon like they did, it's tough to be like, yeah, but is that enough? And when you look at this division top to bottom and how many times they have to play some like you highlighted, an absolute murderer's row, it's tough to like lean that way. And frankly, with McDaniels, I hope they don't win a damn game. So that's for me anyway. So I'm big on board for the under, but I could definitely see a line of 8.5 here being like, well, they just beat up absolutely everybody else because they're hardened, iron sharpens iron type of team from the division. But that's neither here nor there. What are you thinking about this one, V?
I can understand the hesitancy on this one. There are a lot of things that this team, especially Derek Carr, will have to overcome defensively, but it was the same issues they had last year. I mean, their defense was not good last year, and they still won 10 games and made the playoffs. Now you add Devontae Adams, you add Josh McDaniels, and you get rid of John Gruden. I think that's just all great pluses for this team. Derek Carr has been better than I think he's had any right to be over the last few years. He has not had a lot to work with, and he's still putting up good enough numbers. He's making clutch plays. You remember the Indianapolis game from last year. He's just making late game heroics with Hunter Renfrow as his top receiver. And now you just give him Devontae Adams. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him this year. He's one of my favorite MVP long shots. I had him in my piece at 30-1. Yes, this division is tough. That's why, I'm not going to say 10, 11 wins, but 9, 10 wins, I think is doable. Yes, the defense is bad. I think this is going to be a lot of shootouts for this team. I think it's going to be a ton of back and forth, a lot of 30-30 games. But I think Carr is capable of being in those types of games and leading this team up and down the field with the weapons he has. So I feel pretty comfortable taking over, getting them to 9, maybe 10 wins.
Yeah, and a big thing that you hit on, it's a lot quieter this year. It's going to be a lot quieter for them. Now, for them to do what they did last year with all of the noise, all of the controversy, all of the stuff going on off of the football field, and they still came away with 9 wins and added a piece like Adams, it's hard to see the line still be the same. Now, just like Ben had highlighted, such a tough division, such a tough road, but just like you said, they're going to be in some shootout. They were in some shootouts last year, and they made good on a bunch of those shootouts, especially late down the stretch. I begged for them to tie that game against the Chargers.
That would have been the greatest thing.
Begged, but it didn't happen. It was so close. But they pulled out heroics left and right, and now when we look at like 1-score games, and especially what happens when you get into volatile situations like that, it's not easy to be like, oh, okay, they won 5 of these 1-score games. Are they going to again win 5 of these 1-score games? Like maybe not. That's a big what if. And that's what gives this line a lot of that back and forth, that variance. Yeah. But I mean, like you said, going to be quieter. And I think that when you can focus on football, they might be able to bring it out of them. And frankly, I would rather have Derek Carr than a lot of guys in the league. Now, I'm not like going and banging the table for Derek Carr like that he's some elite guy. He's not, as Adams put it, in, getting thrown to from 2 Hall of Famers. Like he's not that guy, but he's still a good player. He's veteran.
Than I think a lot of people think. I think he's not elite. Right. He's not in your top 5. He might not even be in your top 10, but he has enough of a clutch gene. He's got enough talent that he can get you where you need to be, I think.
Right. It was so sad when that his MVP season got taken from him. I was on the train that year. That was so much fun. He's definitely
that was the
capable.
last time he had. I mean, that was one of the last years he had legit receiving help in Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree.
Right.
And let's give it right back to him. Let's see what he can do with somebody like Adams.
Yeah, the best receiver he'll have ever played with, and has played with previously. So
I think my handicap comes down to when they're tough games on their schedule, and I don't see them beating the Niners, the Rams. Let's just say they split with everybody in their division: Niners, Rams, Colts, even the Saints. They're on the road at the Saints. That's a tough game. And how do you those 4 games? I don't know if they can even split those 4 games.
It's fair. Those are definitely swing games, and you got to win probably at least 3 of those if you're going to want to hit the over on this one.
That's fair. None of those games were in that wretched start that I mentioned, which is why I have to go under.
Yeah, it makes sense. It really does. And frankly, like I said, I hope they don't win a damn game. Take that, Big Daniels. All right. So last but certainly not least, our guy Jason Draven will want to bookmark this one. The Los Angeles Chargers, 10.5 wins. V, do you have some good news for Jason?
I think so. I mean, man, this division is just crazy. This is just another roster that is just so good. How can you not call this a Super Bowl ready roster? We'll start at the top. We'll start with Herbert. The last thing we saw from him was him manufacturing one of the greatest last-second drives we've seen in a long time. Whatever he did in that 19-play drive to tie up the game against the Raiders in Week 18 was just completely magical, converting so many 4th downs, hitting these throws in tight windows. He's as legit as they come. Don't be shocked if we're talking about him as a top 2, top 3 quarterback at the end of the season. He's just that good. He still has incredible weapons, and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. There's plenty of good stuff there. Defense is just completely stacked. You have Derwin, and it got better. You have Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. You had Joey Bosa, and what do? You go get Khalil Mack. You go get J.C. Jackson.
It's an embarrassment of riches.
It's an embarrassment of riches. Why can't this team go over, win the division, win a Super Bowl? Nothing besides health is slowing them down. I am all in on this team.
And that's always what it is. It almost seems like they're always really good, and it's some sort of injury. Now, those are such fluky things you can never count on, but now they have a really elite quarterback. They continue to find that consistency. For any of my fellow Broncos fans, you're going to want to turn this one off or mute it for a little while because I'm going to gush about the Chargers for a second. The fact of the matter is that at 10.5, I agree with you that this is a Super Bowl ready roster. And when they're honestly the team that scares me the absolute most out of the West. And it's just because they've been ready for years. For like 2-3 years, they've been building ready. We've always loved their roster, and then they come out, and now's the time. Now is their moment to do it. And on any other division, they're probably 11.5 to 12 win team or like line. But here we're looking at 10.5, which again, I think is a reasonable line for them because they aren't quite as strapped as maybe the Raiders are, where if they really do need to push it against teams, they can. But frankly, I don't know that many teams are going to be able to compete with the defense that they're going to put on the field. They have an embarrassment of riches. It's just dumb. They absolutely terrify me, and they're probably going to be my pick to win the division if my team didn't play in the division also. But I'll definitely be hedging a little bit with them. I'm big on the Chargers this year, and Jason is going to be insufferable in our Discord. So make sure you guys join our Discord, join our Patreon to get in there, and you can watch firsthand Jason lose his absolute mind, good or bad, at the Chargers this season. It's going to be extremely interesting. So, Ben, what do you see with the Chargers when you see this team? Are you as bullish as we are, or and frankly, pretty much the entire football landscape? Or
I was bullish last year, and I was that week 18 hurt my heart along with all the other plays where they couldn't stop the run, or their spine just crumpled. And they did a lot to strengthen the spine. I mean, Khalil Mack's known as a pass rusher, but he's also very good at setting the edge, and they signed some D tackles and whatnot. They are still a little thin at D tackle, but everything looks so good on paper. It just looks so good. The schedule, even, like, it's almost a blessing that they missed the playoffs last year, because look at the Raiders' schedule in comparison to theirs. It's these little margins that are going to make the difference, and the Kings, at least as of last year, has taken advantage of the little margins. I think they kind of went a little overboard there towards the end of going for it on fourth down, but I love the way Staley approaches the game.
Me too.
I love the way he approached the offseason. There was two teams I rushed out to bet for futures as soon as the lines came out. It was the Jaguars and the Chargers, because they had a lot of cap space, and I had faith in at least one of those teams spending that money correctly. And they definitely did. I did not expect them to go get Khalil Mack, which is definitely the biggest feather in their cap as far as the offseason goes. But yeah, over is the way to go. And I think the division is probably a better bet because the more increased odds. Why not bet them to win the Super Bowl? The only doubt I think you can have is that they're the Chargers and injury history. But there's one thing poker has taught me: you cannot play scared. So yeah, got to go with it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you referenced the odds right there, and we talked about them a little bit earlier, but you still see KC at the top. Now, they're not like as solid a hold on the division as they have in the past. They're at plus 175 is generally the consensus here. It looks like FanDuel, for some reason, has them at 155. Gotta love FanDuel, given the weird lines there. When you see the Chargers down here at 225, you can get them as high as 240 on BetMGM. That's a steal. That really is a steal to take the division. Or if you're like me, and you're going to be sprinkling a little bit there on the Broncos, you could take it at a number of spots. It looks like PointsBets has it as high as plus 300.
Honestly, looks like anybody but Kansas City is a solid bet.
Is a solid bet when you look at even the Raiders down there, plus 650, plus 700. Like, I could definitely sprinkle a few dollars on that too. So it'll be an interesting draw. This is a must-watch division, and I'm super excited to see it play out. And I think that does it. That is the last team of the AFC, and we broke them all down for you guys. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it next week with the NFC. We're going to see some sparks fly. I know V has some stuff.
I have a suspicion we're going to have a few more unders next week in the NFC than this week.
There might be a few more unders. That's probably going to be fair. Not so many, but that's a good thing, because from a content standpoint, I love, body slamming teams and bad decisions and things. And we didn't get to do too much of that tonight. So I'm excited.
Oh my God, wait till we talk about Carolina next week. It's all body slams, left and right. Just wait till we get to Carolina.
It's going to be a good time. I'm excited to do it. V, do you have anything to plug? I know we have some stuff coming out, and I know that we're going to be having a lot of stuff coming out for the season. You and me are cooking for that. But what do you have right now going on with the offseason?
Yeah, I had a couple articles already come out. One was the aforementioned odds for teams to finish last in the NFL, or, other way to say it is having the first pick in the draft next year. And then I also did my favorite bets to win MVP. So I picked a few guys who I sprinkled some money on. So go check that one out.
And that just dropped this past week. So everybody go check that out. ImportantNonsense.com. You can find all of these work there. You can find all of the guys' work. Ben, also plugging and chugging. He's got another piece coming out, I think, on Monday. So be on the lookout for that. Ben has been an absolute killer. Ben, you have anything else going on? Anything you want to plug? Any pluggables?
Yeah, just trying to take advantage of what I view as one of the most advantageable markets in the player props market, the futures player props, season long. Check them out. There's a lot coming. There's a lot of rapid fire ones in there, as well as some of my past articles for the award markets, receiving title futures, passing title futures, rushing title futures. Good stuff. And check me out on Twitter.
They've all been great reads. You can find Ben on Twitter, Ben had Ben. And I love your tag, by the way. It always gets me every time. You can find Vishaal at Vishaal_Gupta95. And you can find myself at PFF_Mace. But again, I'm probably going to ignore you anyway. So, no, I'm just going to come and yell at me there. Guys, it's been real, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, stay golden.